Don't look at the paperwork on the kitchen table. I didn't. Not at first. I told myself it was nothing. My son-in-law was just organized. Just keeping things tidy while my wife recovered. That's what I told myself standing in the hallway of our house in Oakville, watching him through the gap in the door, bend over documents I'd never seen before, handwriting that wasn't mine on lines that had my name on them. I had no idea I was standing at the beginning of the worst betrayal a family can endure. My wife's name is Beverly. 51 years we've been married. She grew up in a small town outside of Thunder Bay, the daughter of a school bus driver and a woman who made the best butter tarts in 3 counties. Beverly had a laugh that carried across a room. Not loud, just warm. The kind of laugh that made other people stop what they were doing and smile without knowing why. She was stubborn in the way that only good people can be stubborn. Stubborn about kindness, stubborn about loyalty, stubborn about family. We raised 2 kids in this house. Our daughter, who I'll call my eldest, moved back in with her husband 3 years ago after they had trouble with their place in Mississauga. We were glad to have them, Beverly especially. She'd always wanted a full house again. Our son-in-law came with her. His name is not important now. What matters is what he did. Beverly started getting sick about 14 months ago. Fatigue at first, the kind that makes you think you're just getting older, just slowing down. She's 72, I'm 75. We both figured it was time catching up with us. Then came the tingling in her hands, then her hair, then the confusion. She'd stand in the kitchen and look at me like she was trying to remember something she used to know. We went to the doctor, then to a specialist at Hamilton Health Sciences. Nobody could give us a straight answer for months. Virus, they thought. Maybe an autoimmune issue, maybe early onset something or other. They kept adjusting the theory. Beverly kept getting worse. I was at the hospital with her, this was late February, when the unit nurse came to find me in the family waiting area. I'd seen her around before. Practical woman. No nonsense. The kind of person who doesn't say things she doesn't mean. She sat down beside me and said she needed to speak with me about something sensitive, privately. We walked to the end of the corridor, around a corner near the supply room. She glanced both ways before she spoke. She said, "I've been a nurse for 27 years. I don't do this lightly." Then she told me what the latest toxicology results had shown. Results that hadn't made it to me yet, because there was a delay in the notification process. She said she'd gone to her supervisor that morning, and things were now in motion. But she felt I needed to know right now. She said my wife had elevated thallium levels in her blood. Significantly elevated. Not trace amounts, not environmental. The kind of levels that don't appear by accident. I said, "What is thallium?" She said, "It's a heavy metal. It used to be used in rat poison before it was banned in Canada in the 1970s. It's odorless, tasteless. It mimics other conditions. Hair loss, neurological symptoms, extreme fatigue. It's one of the reasons your wife's case was so difficult to diagnose." My legs stopped working. I don't mean I fell. I mean I leaned against the wall and I couldn't feel the floor under me properly. I said, "How does someone get exposed to that?" She looked at me steadily and said, "Usually through ingestion, over time. Small doses repeated." I heard what she was saying. I just couldn't make it fit into anything I knew about my life. I said, "Are you telling me someone is doing this on purpose?" She said, "I'm not saying who. I'm saying what. The rest is for the police." 20 minutes later, I was in a meeting room at the hospital with a detective from the Halton Regional Police Service. His name was Detective Kouassi, quiet man, 50s. The kind of eyes that don't miss much. He'd already been briefed by the hospital's patient safety officer. He told me the hospital had a protocol for exactly this kind of situation, and that they'd been coordinating since that morning. He asked me to walk him through Beverly's daily routine, who prepared her food, who had access to the house, who'd been around her most consistently in the months since her symptoms began. I told him about my daughter. I told him about my son-in-law. He wrote things down without reacting. Then he asked me if I'd noticed any changes in our financial situation in the past year or two. I said I didn't think so. He said he'd like me to take a closer look when I had the chance. When I got home that night, Beverly was staying overnight at the hospital. I sat at the kitchen table and I opened our filing cabinet for the first time in probably a year. Beverly always handled our paperwork. She liked doing it. I was useless with forms. Everyone in the family knew that. What I found took me about 45 minutes to understand, and when I did understand it, I had to go outside and stand on the back porch in the February cold for a long time. There were documents in there I had never signed. Not my signature, something close, but not mine. A home equity line of credit opened 11 months ago. A beneficiary change form on one of our insurance policies. A letter from our financial advisor, a man we'd dealt with for 20 years, confirming updates to our account that I had no memory of requesting. The line of credit had been drawn down to almost $180,000. I went back inside and I called Detective Kouassi. In the days that followed, I learned things about my son-in-law that rearranged everything I thought I knew. He'd been in significant debt before he and my daughter married. Gambling debts, mostly, from a problem he'd apparently managed to hide from her as well. He'd been funneling money from our account through a series of small transfers, the kind that don't trigger bank alerts. He was the one who'd been preparing Beverly's morning tea every day for over a year. He got up early. He'd made a show of it. How much he loved taking care of her. What a good son-in-law he was. My daughter had told me herself how lucky we were to have him. The thallium, according to what came out later, he'd sourced online. There are ways to get things like that if you look hard enough and you're willing to look in the wrong places. He'd been giving it to her in small amounts for months. Not enough to kill her quickly. Just enough to keep her confused. Just enough to make sure she wasn't asking questions about money. My daughter did not know. I need to say that clearly. She did not know. When the detective sat her down and explained what her husband had done, she went white in a way I'd never seen a person go white. Then she was sick. Then she cried for 3 days without stopping. The marriage she'd thought she was in had never existed. He had married her to get close to us, to our house, to our retirement savings, to a woman who was kind enough to welcome him in and never once locked the filing cabinet. The part that nearly broke me, not the money, not even Beverly's suffering, though God knows both of those broke something in me, was understanding that he had used my daughter as a vehicle. He had let her love him. He had let her defend him to me the one time I raised an eyebrow about how much he was home, how little he worked, how comfortable he seemed with doing nothing. She'd told me I was being unfair to him, that I didn't understand how hard he was trying. I had backed down because I didn't want to cause trouble between them. I backed down. I think about that a lot. Beverly was in hospital for 6 weeks. The treatment for thallium poisoning is not simple. It involves a compound called Prussian blue, which helps the body eliminate the metal, and it takes time. And there were days I sat beside her bed and watched her and felt a kind of helplessness I didn't know I was capable of feeling. I'm not a man who cries easily. I grew up in a household where you didn't, but I cried in that hospital. More than once. She had good days and bad days. On a good day she'd squeeze my hand and ask me to tell her what the weather was doing outside. She always loved weather. She liked knowing what the sky looked like even when she couldn't see it. On bad days she'd sleep for 20 hours and I'd sit there and watch her chest rise and fall, and I'd make deals with things I don't normally believe in. My son-in-law was arrested on a Tuesday, charged with aggravated assault causing bodily harm and fraud over $5,000, among other things. The charges related to Beverly's poisoning went further. There was a discussion of attempted murder, though I don't know how that resolved. I didn't follow every detail. I couldn't. My daughter's lawyer advised her to separate herself from the situation legally as quickly as possible, which she did, and I supported that completely. The money is largely gone. Some of it may be recoverable through civil action. Our financial advisor helped us report the fraudulent transactions, and the bank has been cooperative. But these things move slowly and there are no guarantees. We're not destitute, we own our home, our pension covers our expenses, but the savings we'd built over a lifetime, the cushion, the thing that let us sleep at night, most of that is damaged in ways that will take years to sort out. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that everything is fine now. That would be a lie, and I didn't come here to tell you lies. What I can tell you is that Beverly is home. She's been home for 8 months. Her hair grew back, most of it. The tremor in her hands comes and goes, but the doctors say it will continue to improve. She made butter tarts last month, her mother's recipe, and when she brought them out to the table and set them down and looked at me, neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. My daughter lives nearby now, in a rental apartment in Burlington. She comes for dinner on Sundays. Sometimes she stays late and she and Beverly sit in the living room together, watching something on television, and I hear them laughing at something and I have to walk into another room for a minute. Not because I'm sad, because some sounds are almost too much. She blamed herself for a long time. Still does, I think, in the quiet hours. I've told her what I believe to be true. She loved someone who wasn't capable of loving her back the way she deserved, and there's no version of her that should have known what he was. Good people don't walk around expecting evil. That's not a weakness. That's what makes them good. My son used to say that about his mother. He lives out west, Kelowna, and he drove back the moment I called him. Slept on the couch for 2 weeks. Wouldn't leave until Beverly was eating properly again. He never understood how someone could do what was done to her. Not because he was naive. Because that kind of calculation, that willingness to poison someone slowly and sit across from them at breakfast and ask how they're sleeping, it doesn't exist in him. He genuinely couldn't map it. He'd sit at the kitchen table, trying to make sense of it, and I could see him getting nowhere, because you can't make sense of it using the parts of yourself that are decent. There's something I want to say to anyone listening who has ever second-guessed themselves about someone in their family, who has noticed something off and been told they were imagining it, who has raised a concern and been made to feel like the problem, who has backed down, like I did, because they didn't want to cause trouble. You were not imagining it. The things that seem small. Who's handling the finances? Who controls the information? Who inserts themselves between you and the people who love you? Those things are not small. I'm telling you from where I'm standing now. The small things were everything. Beverly and I went for a walk last week along the lakeshore. February again, a year since all of it came into the light. Cold enough that our breath showed. She had her hat pulled down and her coat buttoned up, and she was walking at a pretty good pace, better than she'd managed in months. At some point she stopped and looked out at the water and said, without turning to me, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to make it about me. I didn't say anything right away. Then I said, it was always about you. You're the whole point of everything. She laughed, that same laugh, the one that makes people stop what they're doing. We turned around and walked back home. If you've ever had someone in your life who seemed to be slipping away and you couldn't explain why, trust yourself. Get the tests, ask the questions, open the filing cabinet. You are not being paranoid. You are not being unfair. You are not causing trouble. You're paying attention. And sometimes paying attention is the only thing that saves the people you love.